Hello everybody, hope you did okay. Now, I haven't really done any shoe reviews for a while, so I thought what I'd do is a bit of a summary of my shoe usage for the year. So far this year I've run a total of 906 miles. That's over 141 days. Had a few rest days along the way. So I've worked out that's an average of 45 miles per week, and it's taken me 128 hours to do that, and that's an average pace of 8:28. So more or less I run for about an hour a day on average, sometimes a bit less, sometimes a bit more. And this year I've worn 28 different shoes, 24 different models of shoe, and 16 collections of shoe. Now, I mean by a collection, I mean like an Endorphin Speed or a Pegasus or a Vaporfly or an Alphafly, something like that. I was still trying to think of a good name, but that's what it says on the Nike website. I was thinking maybe a shoe line or something like that, but if you look at line, you're probably thinking a line on a shoe rather than an actual collection, as it were. So that seems a good description. So what I thought I would do is I'd go through each of these collections, starting from looking at the top three, just sort of like all the ones I use most often, and then some of the shoes that I tried to run in but perhaps didn't get on so well. So third in the list of the most used collections is actually a single shoe, and this is actually the single most shoe that I've actually worn the most this year. 141 miles in this shoe. This is the Puma Velocity Nitro 3. A lot of YouTubers said this is a boring shoe. Well, when you think about it, running is quite boring. If you want to train to be a good runner, most of your running is quite boring. You go out for sort of easy, steady miles most days of the week, and it's not every day of the week you sort of like feel that you need to put on your carbon racers to charge down the road at breakneck speed, either in a session or a race. So a shoe like this serves a great purpose for me because it is quite narrow, but it's not like ridiculously narrow. If you compare it there to the Rebel V4, which is perhaps the widest shoe I've ever known, you can just sort of see from the outsole how much narrower this one is. But it kind of reminds me of a Pegasus, the Velocity Nitro 3. And it'd be interesting to see how the Pegasus 41 comes out very soon. I think it's coming out in this exact same colorway, so it'd be good to test that one out. But anyway, the Velocity Nitro 3 has nitro foam at the top here. It's like dual density, and that's the sort of like premium foam. It's a bit more softer. Then they've got like an EVA type foam underneath it. So it does rather sort of give it a sort of a marginally firmer feel, because I think you're landing on the sort of the firmer material at the bottom. But to me, it feels like a shoe that it just like gets the job done, and because it actually fits me quite well, I don't have to sort of like cinch down the laces ridiculously. I don't need to sort of cut the ends off the laces. So there's quite a lot of slack there, so you do need to put it in a bit. It's nice and plush at the back without being too heavy. And on foot, I was doing sort of like an hour run last night where I was sort of cruising on like quite nicely, doing my streets, darting in and out of cul-de-sacs and that. And it was fine for that. And then when I'm on a straight line, it's good for that. And at the end, I did some strides. And it's a shoe that you kind of thinking, well, I don't really want to do my interval sessions in it, but as a general workhouse shoe, it's actually really good for the job. And I think I actually much prefer it to the Velocity Nitro 2, which strangely sort of bottomed out for me after about 100 miles. So this one has already gone past it. And yeah, so hoping I can use this one a bit more, maybe even a shoe that I get again. And it's a shoe that is quite cheap. I got this one for under £100 with the crafty discount from 40 Runs. So it is a very much an everyday runner's shoe, both on price and I think purpose. So yeah, definitely one to check out if you haven't done so already. So in second place in the collections at 217 miles for the year so far, over 5 different actual shoes, of which I got 2 here, is the Endorphin Speed. Now this is a shoe that I've perhaps worn more than any other shoe, perhaps tying with the Vaporfly, but more on that in a minute. But yeah, so we've got the Endorphin Speed 4 is the white one here, and the green one, the lime green one, is the 3. This is actually my second pair of the 3. I've actually worn the 4 the most, just under 100 miles so far this year. And the 3 is a shoe that I sort of like got cheap, and then the 4 came out. So I've perhaps been reaching more for the 4, but there's not a lot of difference between the 3 and the 4, to be honest. I did a couple of runs where I was wearing a 3 on one foot and a 4 on the other one, and then reversed it over for the next one, and really struggled to find any difference. I'm sure if you watch enough YouTube videos, you'll find all sorts of differences, but for me, not a lot of difference. I would say the 4 fits marginally, very marginally better for me, but there's not much in it, and I think on a blind test, I would be quite hard to tell the difference. The 4 is just slightly heavier, but again, you know, I do go on about weight, but I think in this instance, 20 grams, you don't really feel it, to be honest. And yeah, it just feels like I've just got another version of the Endorphin Speed 3. So I think with Endorphin Speeds, the 1 and the 2, the normal versions, not the RunShields, were quite similar. And I would say the 3 and the 4 are also quite similar as well. People sort of say that they hark back to the Endorphin Speed 1. I've got a pair of those in Portugal, which I'll be going out to in the next few days. So I'll be keen to sort of try them out. Maybe I'll take out a Speed 4 and do a shoe off between the two when I'm out there. Just sort of that. But yeah, it's definitely a shoe that is, for me, is like a lightweight, everyday trainer. And I do occasionally sort of pick up the pace in the speeds, but I much prefer the shoe we'll come on to next to talk about that one. And if you look at the outsoles here after 100 miles, not really seeing any particular wear here. This is 100 miles on the Speed 4, and the Speed 3 is, well, that's still fairly new. I think it's only done sort of under 50 miles, so you obviously expect that one to be doing okay. I do have my original Speed 3 here just to hand, which I haven't actually worn this year. I sort of retired this one. I thought it was sort of time to give that one a go. The outsole's still looking fine, maybe just a bit of wear here where I toe off, but I do notice in shoes that it's not really the state of the outsoles the problem, it's the state of the foam and how you sort of feel in them. And if you've got a new shoe, then, well, why sort of like keep another one going? So I got this one to about 250, which is usually my threshold for retirement. So I think this has had a good innings, and I think this one perhaps won't be seeing the light of day again, but it served me quite well. And I've still got the Endorphin Speed 2 RunShield as a sort of my wet weather lightweight option. I haven't worn this one for a few weeks, although today it's looking out rather wet, so maybe the day that I do wear this one. I've worn 2 pairs of these this year. This is my 4th pair. I've managed to find another pair on eBay, so I haven't done too many miles on this one yet, but the 3rd pair I've done, again, 250 miles like the Endorphin Speed 3 I just mentioned there. So retired this one, but this one's still got plenty of life left. It doesn't feel quite as sort of like bouncy as I remember this one, but I think, yeah, the shoes kind of move on, don't they? So shoes that you felt like were really sort of like well cushioned and really responsive, when you come back to them after a couple of years, maybe don't feel so great. But I do find this is an amazing option for wet weather, when you just want to do a road run and it's not sort of ridiculously wet, because it keeps most of the wet out. You can go on some light trails without doing too worried about your feet getting sodden on the first puddle, as it were. And certainly a shoe that I can pick up the pace in. And indeed, this was the shoe model I used for my 35-mile 55k 55 birthday run a couple of years ago, which seems to be time marching on now. I'm 57, coming on 58 on the next birthday, so time flies, doesn't it? So in first place in the collections, no real surprise, the Vaporfly here. I got the version 1 on the left here, and I've got the 2 in the middle and the 3 on the right as you look in there. So I've done a total of 276 miles over 6 different pairs, and these are probably the 3 pairs that I've worn most this year. The 2 version, this is the one I've perhaps worn the most, about 130 miles this year from new. And the Vaporfly 3, also seen quite a lot of good usage. I do nearly all my workouts in a Vaporfly. 29 out of the 32 workouts I've done this year have been in a Vaporfly. In terms of outsole wear, well, I don't seem to sort of like do too badly with the Vaporflies. I know a lot of people have problems with the Vaporfly outsoles. My friend Joseph went through 2 pairs of Vaporfly 3s in about sort of 20 miles each, I think. But these ones have done about 180 miles now and are still shaping up fine. This pink pair of Vaporfly 1s has done just over 200 miles, not too bad. And this white pink pair of the Vaporfly 2s, about 140 miles. And again, that sort of feel like they're fairly new. And I do find with Vaporflies that people say, oh, they wear out quickly. But my most battered pair is probably this one, which I actually wore in the Seville Marathon in 2020. But I still actually don't use that for a session this year. It's quite a good option if you've got like a bit of mud, wet day, and you don't want to get worried about it getting it too sort of trash. But I mean, the outsole's kind of fine. Bits are like flaking off the front there, I suppose, but in terms of the actual usage for sessions, it's still doing great. That's kind of why I use it. And I think the Vaporfly 1 just is a shoe that just sort of fits me best. I think just the fact that I can get that, the lockdown with the Vapor Weave here at the top, and it just sort of feels like to me that when I put this on, it's a shoe that's wanting me to get going. And whereas I do find with the Vaporfly 3, although it's a shoe that, funny enough, I feel better the faster I go in it. I did a 10k road race in it, and it was pretty bad. I think when I was sort of like getting down to sort of the 7-minute mile, I was getting a bit sloppy and just not on a good day. It just felt a bit of an effort. But I think I do find with the Vaporfly 1 and 2 just a slightly more firmer feeling compared to the 3. But it's kind of a weird one because, as I said, when I get faster, even though it's softer, it feels more sort of lively. So it's a shoe that, although it's sort of softer, it feels firmer the faster you go. Maybe that's just the fact you just get on and bounce off the road. I don't know. But Which one of the three do you prefer? I think I'm going to go back to basically having them in order. I think I think of all the shoes, probably the Vaporfly one is the clear winner for me now. I think I've grown to like the two more, and the three, although it is a lot lighter than the two, it's hard to tell the difference. And I've raced in all three, had good and bad races in all three. I've had good and bad sessions in all three, but it's a shoe that I keep coming back to, and if in doubt, I put it on. In fact, I've only used two other shoe models for workouts this year. Two were in the Alphafly when I was testing them out, and the other one was in the Endorphin Elite, which says it all, doesn't it? So they were the top three. I'll just quickly go through some of the other ones. In fourth place is the Alphafly 3 from 49 miles. So that was literally from a week of testing back in January. I haven't worn it since, which says it all, really, doesn't it? I had to go and find where it was. I really ought to get out in them again, but as you may recall, I really struggled in this shoe. I see Andy Rayner's actually quite liking them, which goes to show that somebody with size 13 feet maybe has different takes on things. I see he raced in them the other day, although it wasn't his best race, but I think that's more the weather than the shoes. But yeah, so it's interesting how different runners like different ones. But yeah, for me, it just felt like heavy and clumpy and just a lot of shoe on foot, really. But yeah, maybe now it's sort of like warmer, I'll give these another go and report back. But I really did struggle in these, and yeah, so I wouldn't be sort of desperately keen to buy another pair for sure. In fifth place in the collections front is the Novablast 3 and 4 here. So the Novablast at 44 miles. I've kind of struggled a bit with the Novablast over the years. I mean, I sort of blow hot and cold with them. For a while I was using the 4 a fair bit and the 3 a fair bit. But I just find that they're quite light shoes. I mean, they actually are lighter, I think, now than the Endorphin Speed 4, which is crazy. But they just feel heavy to me. I think just for the fact that they just feel a lot of shoes. This is the only ASICS shoe that I actually currently use. I mean, ASICS don't do my size in the Meta Speeds or the Superblast. So I kind of feel like I'm always trying these out of habit because they're kind of quite popular, but I haven't really worn these so much of late. I mean, I'm much more looking for the Velocity Nitro 3s now, and if it's got any sort of like faster days of reaching for a carbon racer like the Vaporfly. But yeah, of late, it's just a shoe that I haven't really been reaching for that more. I mean, it's a solid sort of like easy day shoe, although it's kind of like something and nothing in a way. It's quite a light shoe, but it just feels heavy, so it feels like a bit of an odd one. But yeah, I mean, it's a handy one to have. It's a bit firmer than, say, an Invincible if you don't like something that's squidgy soft. But perhaps I'm just sort of struggling now to see the point of the Novablast. And yeah, kind of lamenting that I can't try ASICS' more expensive shoes. It's kind of relevant for me. If they don't want to make the best shoes for me, then should I really be bothering with them at all? But yeah, as I said, I'll give these a bit more of a go, but yeah, also a bit of a backup shoe, I think. So in sixth place at 43 miles is the Rebel V4 here, perhaps the widest shoe possibly imaginable. If you look at this compared to the Vaporfly 1 here, look how much wider that is, and if you can see that, especially at the heel there and across the middle, and you really do feel like on the road you've got an awful lot of outsole touching the ground. But having sort of like then got the cinch down a lot, I mean, perhaps to the point that it almost feels like I'm cutting off my circulation. I've actually got to the point I can actually use these shoes, but it's, I mean, 43 miles kind of says it a lot, really. I mean, it's a shoe that I just haven't been reaching for after the initial testing. And I think just sort of like feel if I want to get out for an easy run, I might just stick on those Velocity Nitro 3s. And if I want to do a session, and obviously one of the Vaporflies. So yeah, I might struggle to use this one any more than I currently have. I like it more than the Rebel V2, which I just found too soft. So the softness factor in this is okay. But if they lopped off about a third of the width, this will be an ideal shoe for me. It'll probably come down to about 250 grams. So I could never understand why there is a wide version of possibly the widest shoe ever. But if you've got this one, do you find it okay? I mean, your feet probably aren't as narrow as mine, but is it a shoe that you'd be getting on with? In seventh is a firm favourite of some everyday runners, and I think it's increasingly popular now as a race shoe. It's now 2 years old, so I think we're crying out for a replacement. This is the Adios Pro 3, and I've done about 200 miles in these now, and yeah, the outsole's looking pretty good. I mean, it feels almost as new, really. I mean, that's like a slick outsole. Not seeing any real signs of problems there at all. It feels sort of quite nice on foot. The problem with this shoe, I think, is just a very sloppy upper. I've had to sort of like really work that in quite tight. It's not that wide a shoe. It's just like the tongue is just so thin, so there's not much to latch onto. So I'm finding that it's a bit uncomfortable on foot after a while. Although having said that, it's a shoe that I quite like as sort of an advanced sort of like long run shoe. Like, I used it on Sunday for a long run when I wanted to have a bit of more cushion under my feet and a bit of zip to it when I wanted to pick up the pace towards the end, and it worked well for that. But it's a shoe that I'm kind of like quite keen to get off my foot. I think just because of the fact it's quite tight here and not very comfortable as such, but it does the job. I think as a speed shoe though, for me it's just a bit heavier than the Vaporflies, and I never really sort of like got on with it that great for an out and out speed shoe. I've done a few sessions in it, but not for a while. I haven't done any sessions in it this year, which is quite telling. But yeah, it's a shoe that I've used a bit for sort of like plodding along. So yeah, 7th place at 33 miles, but yeah, it's a good sort of backup shoe for like a long run and stuff like that. Now in 8th place is the HOKA Mach, or the Mark 6. I've only used the one Mark. In fact, it's the only Mark I've got. And it's a usual sort of story with HOKA that, apart from the Rocket X, which I haven't actually worn this year either, so that's perhaps another sign that I do struggle a bit with this one. I mean, it was okay. I've worn it for 32 miles. It's just sort of a shoe that I just don't feel like I'm that keen to wear. Again, it's a bit like the Rebel. What is it? It's sort of quite light, but it doesn't feel that light on foot. It's a shoe that it's definitely a bit narrower than or less wide than the Mach 6. But again, it's still quite a chunky outsole there, and I do feel like I've got quite a lot on the road. And it's a 5mm drop shoe, and I always struggle a bit with 5mm drop shoes. I think I'm just more comfortable with the 8 to 10s in the speeds and the Vaporflies and the Adios Pros. Although the Adios Pro is 6.5, isn't it? I haven't said that. But I think there's quite a difference between a 6.5 shoe and a 5mm drop shoe. And I always sort of feel like I'm having to sort of work the back of my legs a bit, and having to push off the ground. It feels like it's not like a natural pull off. I'm having to sort of do a bit more of the work. Maybe some people seem to like that, but maybe just get what you get used to. And I find the foam in the HOKA shoe is sort of okay, but nothing really amazing. Again, this is perhaps a shoe I should try out more, but again, it's a bit of a disappointment to me, to be honest. And again, I think having found the Velocity Nitro 3, although perhaps this is a more advanced shoe than that one, just haven't been reaching for it very often. Have you got this one? What do you think? Do you like it or not? Or are you on the fence a bit like me? So in 9th place, and this is the last sort of significant one, is the Endorphin Elite. I've only worn this twice this year, once for a session and once for a long run. I wouldn't say this is as favourite as, say, Andy Rain. I think this is his favourite race shoe. I think it's a shoe that definitely is, in a way, like Elite, it gives it its name, but it's not really a shoe, I don't think, for going too easily. And I think it's a shoe that, to me, that you have to be on your game with it. It's relatively firm for modern day standards for just plodding along. So, and I think also it sort of feels quite harsh for that. So I think it's, to me, that it's a shoe that it's a racing shoe. And when I took it out for a long run going up hills and stuff, yes, it was okay, but you kind of think it wasn't perhaps the greatest of choices for that. And that's perhaps a modern day trend, isn't it? You buy a racing shoe and hope to use it for all sorts of stuff. I will say with shoes that you should be able to wear them for everything, but I just don't think this is a shoe I would want to actually wear for like a marathon, I suppose, because I've always got the Vaporflies to fall back onto. I did actually wear this in a park run, to be fair, and it was all right, but yeah, there's just sometimes I think it comes down to what you actually like wearing. When you look at the stats, they may look okay, but sometimes you just feel like I just prefer to wear something else. And yeah, I'm quite pleased I got this, and I think it's got 130 miles or so. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those sort of like super trainer type shoes. It comes out for the odd workout when I thought I'd better give my Vaporflies a bit of a rest. But I think one workout out of 32 this year says it all in terms of how keen I'm going to get my feet, aren't I? In terms of other shoes, this is the Vomero 17. I quite like this one. I've only actually worn it the once this year. Maybe I feel it's like a bit of a last year's shoe, and it's the sort of shoe that I got to sort of like, maybe I had to admit, it's got a shoe to do a review of, and you think, well, actually, when you've worn it a bit, you think, how keen are you to actually wear it? It's one of those shoes, it's got ZoomX in it, but when you wear it, it's not actually like a Vaporfly at all. It feels more like just a normal sort of like pepped up Pegasus, as it were. Speaking of which, I haven't actually worn the regular Pegasus this year. I think largely, again, I think that was a 2023 testing shoe, and although I could wear it, I kind of feel like sometimes you just sort of like giving the shoe a good innings, and you may come back to it, but you just want to wear the ones that you've bought more recently, don't you? So yeah, a shoe that I'll probably wear again, but as I said, it's only worn it once this year. And we just finished with the two shoes I wore most in races this year so far. I've done 6 races, 4 in the Dragonfly 1 here, the green pair, and we've got the Christmas tree spikes on at the back, and the Dragonfly 2s, the proto versions. Well, really it's just a marketing gimmick. They are the Dragonfly 2s. Biggest difference that you'd see, obviously, that the Dragonfly 2 have got 4 spikes, and the Dragonfly 1 has just got the 6. I didn't really notice much of a difference the other day. I felt that the Dragonfly 2 just felt a bit more bouncy, but it could be just a new shoe effect outdoors compared to the Dragonfly 1. But neither of these shoes have been worn very much at all. I've only worn the Dragonfly 1 for the 1500 race the other day and the 4x1 and a few strides, and the Dragonfly 1 here, again, it's mainly just the indoor races, so barely 15 miles I think all tops, and a couple of races last year. I think the other difference perhaps visually is that I think just the midsole there at the middle bit just very slightly wider in the Dragonfly 2. Otherwise you're really sort of struggling to see much difference. I think the actual bit here at the back, looking at it more closely, looks more or less the same. Perhaps I'll have to do a shoe off comparing the two, but if you're thinking of getting the Dragonfly 2 but see the Dragonfly 1 at a nice bargain, then I won't be desperately rushing out to get the 2 unless you want the latest and greatest, as it were, which of course I do, of course. So how is it when YouTubers say that? So they say, don't do what I do, just buy the cheap shoe, and then they sort of show every shoe going. So yeah, I mean, I'm a bit contradictory in that terms. I want to sort of try out the latest shoes, but these were 160, and I think you can get these for, if you look closely, about 70 quid at the moment, which is an amazing deal, really. So anyway, so I hope you found this look at my 2024 shoes interesting. Which of these ones have you got? Which are your favourites? Do you agree with some of them? Do you disagree with others? I'm sure everyone will have their own opinion. Like and subscribe on that, and see you next one then. Bye!